Back here on CBS Sports HQ, a lot of teams have been making moves. The Cowboys, though, have been quiet. Remember when Jerry Jones said they were going to be all in, and then we saw how that worked out? Well, now Stephen Jones is saying, quote, we're going to be selectively aggressive out here. Obviously, our goals historically have been to try to fill as many of your musts and needs before the draft. We didn't get to that totally accomplished last year, you don't say. That's me saying that. That's not Stephen Jones. But then Stephen Jones goes on to say, but certainly that is always the goal, end quote. So the Cowboys, as mentioned, they have been very quiet to start free agency. It's a new head coach there.
Someone said they were selectively aggressive with their new head coach as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's Chris Hassel saying that. Then they paid CeeDee Lamb really late. Remember last season into the season, just restructured Dak's contract. And then, of course, they have to pay Micah Parsons, who is looking at Myles Garrett's contract.
That's that Jamar Chase situation.
Exactly. He's going to want to make $40 million a year or more, actually. And I was joking with Hassel. I was saying, hey, I just got a red alert for something that the Cowboys did, and that was re-signing their kick returner, KaVontae Turpin. So they've done that. They re-signed their long snapper, but Kyle, they have not really been all in. I don't know, selectively aggressive, you say. It just feels like the Cowboys have been quiet, considering they missed the playoffs last year, and this is a team and a franchise with really high expectations.
Well, I think that retaining of Osa Odighizuwa was big, and if you're Micah Parsons, you really like having that understanding that Dallas is going to continue to pour some resources into the defensive side of the ball, because whose job does that make easier? Micah Parsons. He'll get more opportunities for one-on-ones on third downs, but you have to find a way, like Stephen Jones is talking about here, being quietly aggressive for your team's needs before this draft. And we're all kind of waiting with our hands under our butts, trying to figure out what the hell the Cowboys even mean by that, because Jerry says one thing, Stephen said something else, and then you end up in this spot where you're no man's land. And Cowboys fans, they're pretty pissed, I would imagine. They're trying to see moves made to have America's team become America's team again, because we're tired of hearing about it.
Is it selectively aggressive, or is it just cheap? Because that's what it feels like to me, is they don't want to overspend. And I think it's probably taken some teams, and I would put Jerry Jones in this category, struggled coming to grips with some of the money that's going out there for the top tier free agents. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. I'm trying to recall the last time they spent big for a free agent that came from outside the building. They do take care of their own. That is one thing. It took a while, but they did pay Dak. They did pay CD. Now they've reworked both those deals. You mentioned Micah Parsons. I think that is a big reason they want to make sure that they can take care of him. But when you dole out those big contracts to your own guys, there's only so much to go around. So they really have been selective. But you mentioned it, the most important position on the squad, Trent Sieg is under contract for 3 years. They're long snapper. So, like, there is no worries there. 3 years, $4.5 million. I heard he's one of the top paid long snappers in the league. So they are ready to just back up the truck to him.
And they're in this division where the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. The Commanders are on the rise with a quarterback that looks like he could be an all-time great, perhaps. Then you have the Eagles here really losing a lot of key pieces on defense, Kyle. We were talking about this in the break, and you said this is the cost of winning. 6 players from that defense they will not have moving forward.
Yeah, it costs to be a boss, DK. You know that. And the Super Bowl, it's a kingmaker for everybody on the roster. Everybody's going to get paid, whether you're retained like Zach Bond or you're left to go like a few of these names here on the right-hand side of the list. That's a lot of names on that list, and they're all big-time players. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, they do such a great job of developing talent within their building. And I said this earlier on our show. Not all front offices are created equally. Not all coaching staffs are created equally. Philadelphia has a great combination of 2 great groups in that regard, and that's why they're able to, every year when somebody walks out the door, be able to shuffle a new guy into the lineup, and next thing you know, he's playing in Orlando in the Pro Bowl or the Super Bowl. So I'm not really too concerned with the Philadelphia Eagles. This was expected as part of their retooling for next season.
It's why what the Chiefs and Patriots doing, building those dynasties, and the Chiefs having even the opportunity to go back to back to back. I know they fell short, but back to back is hard enough because everyone does have their hand out. Everyone does want to get paid, and there's massive opportunity to do that after a Super Bowl run like they just had. Howie Roseman has done a phenomenal job. They've got some young players that they drafted really well. So I still feel like it feels massive, like they've lost so much, but they're not going anywhere anytime soon. They've got Saquon coming back, like that was another part. They got Zach Bond coming back. They have Jalen Hurts under contract. So they've got a lot of their key pieces. I think that's where it becomes a little little bit tricky where you have to choose. Like, you know how you ask a parent, who's your favorite kid? And you'll never, like, you always give some BS answer.
Unless you're Deion Sanders.
Right, unless he ranks them. I have a clear favorite right now. My youngest is my favorite right now. It's not even close.
Wow.
But when you are a GM or a team, you kind of do have to decide who your favorites are that you cannot let walk out the door. And they're showing who they kind of have backed and who they really find the most value in, some of those critical components.
I mentioned the Commanders. Pick a favorite right now in this division. I know we haven't even reached the official start of the new league year, but who you picking in that division right now?
Eagles.
There's never been a back-to-back. And how long has it been since a back-to-back division winner?
It's been over a decade.
I'll go with the Commanders. I like their moves already. I think they're going to be very aggressive. They brought in Larry Tunsil, made the trade for that. I think they're going to continue to put this team around Jaden Daniels. I like him. I think this will be a year that Philly is set back somewhat. Man, Saquon's still back there, isn't he?
They just do it so well on both sides of the ball, Philadelphia does. And Jalen Hurts, newfound confidence. He went to the Super Bowl, didn't quite get the win a couple years ago, outplayed Mahomes. This time, they dominated in the Super Bowl. That confidence rolls into the next season. I truly think the Philadelphia Eagles will repeat there.
Okay, let's keep it in the NFC because it's been a tough, week or so to be a Niners fan. Our Katie Mox has been going through it.
Tough couple of years.
Yeah, but even more so because it feels like that NFC Championship team from 2 seasons ago, they're really kind of dismantling it. Debo is gone. He's with the Commanders. Dre Greenlaw, Ward, Elijah Mitchell, of course, releasing Kyle Juszczyk as well. So a lot of moves that are being made. And then, of course, you still have to pay Brock Purdy, and we're waiting on that. But, Danny, what do you make of all of these different moves that we're seeing from San Francisco?
So it was interesting. I was listening to John Lynch talk about this kind of, is it a rebuild, how you describe it? But much like we were talking about the Eagles, he felt like a little bit like, man, this isn't supposed to happen unless you win a Super Bowl. And they felt like they had their window that was a couple years ago that just got away from them. And it feels like this is a little bit of a reset. I don't want to say rebuild, but they're just kind of saying, all right, we need to pivot. Great term. Great term, Kyle. Thanks for coming up with that. A pivot, because they were getting older. When you see that many injury issues start cropping up on a roster that's getting older, you get players that are more expensive. Their salary cap costs go up there. So you're trying to manage all of this. You still have to play Brock Purdy, because I think that's one of the priorities they want to get done in the organization. They've already paid Christian McCaffrey. Again, you have to prioritize who are going to be your key pieces, who you're bringing back. Then you have to move off on some guys who, Debo has always been kind of a polarizing figure with them by forcing a trade, trying to get his way out, so he got paid. It's been a little bit uncomfortable, so that one's not too surprising. But I do think this is a little bit of a pivot for the 49ers, realizing we're going to have to start building younger, talented players up, and they're going to have to rely a bit more on Brock Purdy to step up and be a little bit more of a game changer instead of a game manager, which he's been for the most part throughout his career.
Yeah, they're just rebranding a little bit. That window closed, certainly, but that doesn't mean their ability to get in is gone. They're just going to have to find a new point of entry. And they've had to clear some of these older guys out. And I just think it's tough to go and lose after having so much success. Year in, year out, and you go lose those tough games, takes a toll on your roster. They have to find a new way in.
To Danny's point that he made a few minutes ago, it's really impressive what the Chiefs, what the Patriots did all those years, being contenders every single year. We see Eagles going to reload on defense, 49ers pivoting here as well. The Texans gave up the 3rd most sacks in the NFL last season. C.J. Stroud running all over the place, always on his back. And then they trade Laremy Tunsil, who only gave up 2 of those sacks. They gave up close to 60 sacks, 54 sacks. How does that make sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me. And with the issues we saw last year, the disjointed nature of that offense, I would think that the priority would be solidifying and bolstering, reloading that offensive line. The Laremy Tunsil move is a head-scratcher to me, and good on the recipients of Laremy Tunsil's deal. But for the Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud is your franchise. If you can't get that sack number under, let's say, 45, then you're going to be in hot water all the time. And each one of these games is going to be a nightmare for you.
I agree. It's a little bit perplexing of what has happened with Houston. I thought CJ regressed somewhat last year after he had set the bar so high in his rookie year, which was spectacular. Comes back to earth, but a lot of this is due to the pressure that he was under all season long. Stephon Diggs was hurt. That move was supposed to help him add some depth. They had injuries. Yeah, they had injuries at the wide receiver position. So it's explainable. It's understandable that he did regress, but one of those reasons was the offensive line. Look at what Chicago's doing with their offensive line around a young, talented, quarterback in Caleb Williams. look at the Commanders, who are like, yeah, we'll take him. We want to protect our young quarterback. That's what's a little bit perplexing. I hope there's a game plan, whether it's in the draft or other. I know they brought in Laken Tomlinson to fix up that interior of the offensive line, but it's a very short term. He's not exactly the same caliber player Laramie Tunsil is. So very curious to see what the Texans do the remainder of this offseason and the draft to try to protect C.J. Stroud.
All right, lastly, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, because this is a fan base that is just dying for a playoff win, and it feels like the best signing that they've had is quarterback Zach Wilson. So, DK, what do you make of Miami and the, I guess, moves they're not really making? And we're talking about Zach Wilson in terms of Miami and what they're doing in the free agency.
Of Tua on a boat.
Yeah.
He's looking like
was
me.
That him?
I don't know. They were claiming it was him.
I didn't know if that was AI generated Tua, like with a beer. I needed to fact check it.
I could see him, you know, he's got a little off season.
I love that.
I do too. Yeah, he just let it go for a couple months and then you dial it back in. The season
but
that's what OTAs and training camps are.
Yes.
It's hard to come back from that.
This is a massive year for Mike McDaniel and this Dolphins franchise, and Tua specifically. After getting a big payday. You know, I was down there last year at training camp, and there was so much optimism, and they were willing to address the playoff drought. They were willing to address the December collapse the year before, and going to Kansas City and getting, beat up in a cold weather game. And it just, there was a lot of confidence. They, new defensive coordinator, a lot of new pieces, and then it all goes just completely by the wayside. A lot of goodwill with the fans, and I think some of that confidence in the locker room was done. I am worried about the Dolphins, where that drought is going to continue more so now. I look at this, and the roster's good, but I think it needed some pieces to be filled, and I don't see many significant moves that would make me change the belief that the Dolphins are going to be a playoff team next year.
Well, the move that makes my ears perk up a little bit here is offensive lineman James Daniels. I had him when he was a rookie. He was about 19 years old, came from Iowa, and as you know, those guys are ass kickers. Was a good player in Pittsburgh as well. He's got position versatility, center or guard, so that helps out a lot if you've got a guy that can swing around the offensive line. But the Zach Wilson deal, you have to think that this is, we are buying a gold mine that we haven't pulled gold out of yet, and we're hoping that we can get our pickaxe in there and get the right stuff. His time with Sean Payton was priceless, and I think that there had to have been some sort of meeting with him and Mike McDaniel where they were on the same page, and they said, if it goes south with Tua, are you ready to be the guy? And it seems like McDaniel made the decision that he is.
I mean, the Dolphins, too, have been caught with their pants down before with a really poor backup situation, so at least they've given somebody who's shown the talent. I know he's probably, and this has been a common theme. We've seen Justin Fields get another opportunity. Sam Darnold's been around the block. Baker Mayfield was around the block before he got his opportunity. Kind of figured it out before they figured it out. Maybe that's what the Dolphins are thinking. If he does have to play, maybe it's time that he figured it out. It's the right situation.
We'll give McDaniel his genius pin back.
That's right.
He got it revoked there for a little bit.
That's your team, your childhood team, Danny, the Miami Dolphins, looking to win a playoff game for the first time in Danny's entire life. Danny and Kyle Long with us here on HQ. We are your place for NFL 365 news, highlights, scores, breaking news. A lot this week. It's all right here with the new league year beginning on Wednesday.